Hello students, today we are going to talk about Unit 1.2 and Unit 1.3 of Creative Writing. Unit 1.2 is Essentials of Creative Writing and Unit 1.3 is the various kinds of creative writing, that is poetry, prose, features and non-features. I hope you all remember what we studied in Unit 1.1, how to tap your creative skill. So we'll move to a little advanced level today as we understand what are the essential or the necessary things when it comes to creative writing, and also we'll be understanding in detail some of the different kinds of creative writing. So let us begin. I'll be starting off with certain tips that we can use when it comes to creative writing. I'm sure all of us have wondered that why some people are good at writing interesting pieces while others may have a very hard time coming up with even just one sentence, say even a caption for your Instagram or your Facebook page. Trust me, there are no set rules to follow while writing. Of course, there is a certain level of grammatical knowledge that you should have when it comes to creative writing, but everyone has their own ways of writing, and practically no one in this world can teach you how to write creative writing. As we had discussed in our previous class as well, creative writing is a kind of a passion. It comes from within. It's a kind of a talent, but you can always hone your skills when it comes to creative writing. So except for the long very very long follow structure of writing that comprises of an introduction, a body and a conclusion, we can always add something in between, like say a quotation from your favorite writer, from your favorite book, that you can add into your creative writing, that will incorporate and make your writing even more cheerful and beautiful. So there are certain tips that we will be starting with. First of all, write the introduction in the end. Yes, you're hearing it right. The introduction should be written in the end and not in the first. The idea is most people make the mistake of writing or struggling to write at the introduction first. They know that this has to be the most interesting sentence that will grasp the reader's attention, and thus they tend to spend a lot of time coming up with the right tone, the sentence, and sometimes a quote or an anecdote, because they know that that will work. But you are not supposed to do that. Take it from me, you are not supposed to do the introduction part first. Even the most experienced writers find it very hard to come out with a catchy introduction line. So try writing it in the end after you have written the body of your creative writing part, so that you know where your introduction is heading the reader to. The second very important tip would be practice free writing. Yes, we all get ideas to write all day, every day, and we end up writing nothing in the end. This is because we have many ideas but then we don't know where to start from. Sometimes ideas comes to us, and we tend to forget it later on, is when we miss out on a very essential part of writing. So before you sit down to write a great piece, think of what has happened throughout the day. Try to filter out on certain aspects and then continue writing. This will help you to filter out your thoughts and develop something with right words and right pace, and obviously right chronology. So if you are writing for quite a long hour you have been writing, so try to filter out from that as well. Come back to your writing after some time, and then try to filter out those ideas that you don't think are necessarily anymore required, and then continue with your writing. Listen to music without lyrics. When you listen to songs with lyrics, especially the ones you know by your heart, you'll be able to focus on your writing. Your mind will be thinking about the line that will come next in the song more than your writing. Now, although music makes you calm and cool minded, it will also help in writing. It may also distract you if your favorite songs are playing. So what you can do is, you can rather play instrumentals or songs that you don't know the lyrics of. You will eventually get used to the lyrics, but it will also help you in the time being. Plus you will learn new songs. So the advantage is, you are not letting the outside world distract you, rather you are. And as you know, music is a rhyme. Music is a beautiful creative imagination. Is made of imagination. So music will help your mind to settle down. It will help you to calm you down, and it will certainly help you to focus more on your creative aspect. The fourth tip would be finding your place. Yes, it is very very important to find your place. What is your place? You may ask, the place, the room that you occupy in your house, or maybe as a student or as a professional, you already know your place, but there is something more to it. That is, when you are writing creative, it is always essential not to get disturbed by any external agent. it is essential to have that one place for yourself where nobody is disturbing you, okay, so that you do your writing in your very comfortable, and the space is comfortable for you. So you have to make sure that this place does not disturb you in any way. It is not associated with any bad memories. It is not associated with very untidy space or anything. So you can lock, actually you can find a space maybe in your house where you can lock the door, and you can make sure that your laptop where you are writing, or the pen and paper that you are using, or everything is in front of you. You have a working earphone, you have everything that is required for you, so that once you start writing there is no disturbance or any loss of idea, even if it means that a word that you may have made your sentence is really good. The next point would be edit. Yes, very, very importantly, not just for creative writing, for any kind of writing that you do throughout your life, it is very important that you know the key to a great writing is always revising, reviewing and editing it again and again until you feel that you are satisfied with it. See, the word limits do not matter. What matters is even in 100 words you will be able to describe or bring out the imagination of people which others may do in 500 words. So that is the skill. You need to keep that skill in mind. There could be times where you feel, the piece that you are writing is not coming together because it may be your first writing. So take some time out, go back to your writing again. Yesterday, if you all remember, we had discussed about in our first session wherein creative writing is a longer process. It comes with patience, so you have to have a lot of patience when it comes to creative writing. So have that patience in you. Go back to your writing again and again. Chip, clip, add, subtract, whatever you have to do. Make sure that you come up with the right sentence, the right word, and that will help you to make your piece better. And finally, very importantly, give it to someone for review. I'm pretty sure you have seen that even when it comes to a novel, there would be editors, or any book there will be editors, there will be multiple editors as well. So you need not necessarily be an English professional, someone who speaks good English, but then you may have friends, you may have professors, you may know neighbors as well who are good in English. So it's better to always give your piece of writing to someone who speaks English, like a reader who is going to be people like you, or someone like me who is a first time writer. So give it to someone who is an expert. So surely they are going to point out your grammatical errors and typos, and you can also use a software called Grammarly to correct your English grammar, and they're also going to give you a very basic review of what they are getting with your piece. You can change accordingly, but feedback is very, very important, because see, unless you know what is missing in your writing, you will be ending up giving a very secondary or a very bad piece of writing. You do not want it, because your first impression is your last impression. So when it comes to creative writing, if in the first time you hit the nail, is when you might end up doing something great. So this was all about the tips of creative writing. I hope that all of you are going to follow these tips and become pros when it comes to creative writing. We will move to subunit 1.2, where we will be discussing the difference between prose and poetry. Very, very important. Many of us do love listening to poetry. Some of us do love writing a prose, but then for many of us it may not be clear what is the basic difference between prose and poetry, because see, literature refers to written creative work, particularly those which have a very high and enduring value. It is known for its form, which the message is presented or communicated, and its content. Prose and poetry are the two very common forms of literature, wherein prose is written work which contains sentences and paragraphs and does not have any metrical structure, as against poetry is a genre of literature which is based on a particular form that creates a rhyme. The basic difference between prose and poetry is that we have sentences and paragraphs, wherein lines and stanzas can be found in a poetry. Further, there is regular writing in prose, but there is a unique style of writing a poetry. We can find prose in newspaper articles, blogs, short stories, etc. However, poetry is used to share something very special aesthetically. Poetry does not come out for everyone and for everything. Poetry is letting out of emotion. So when you express your thought process into an emotion, can be called as a poetry. So we will be talking about the difference between poetry and prose. We are going to also discuss about the definition first, because there are formal definitions to poetry and prose. We'll quickly touch upon that before we go into the different types of prose and poetry. Now, talking about the definition of prose, a prose can be an ordinary writing style in literature, which encompasses characters, plots, mood, theme, the point of view, setting, making it a distinctive form of language. Okay, it is written basically using grammatical sentences, which forms a paragraph. It may also include dialogue. It is sometimes supported by images, but does not necessarily have any metrical structure. Prose can be fictional or non-fictional, heroic, alliterative, village, polyphonic, prose poetry, etc. So any kind of biography, autobiography, memoir, essay, short story, fairy tales, article, novel, blog, and so forth can use prose for creative writing. Now, the definition of poetry would be, on the other hand, poetry is something that arouses a complete imaginative feeling. By choosing, you choose appropriate language, you choose appropriate emotions, you select words and arrange them in a manner that creates a proper pattern, a rhyme, one or two more words having identical ending sounds and rhythm. Now, poetry uses an artistic way to communicate something special, that is, musical intonation of stressed and unstressed syllables to express or describe moments, ideas, experiences, feelings, thoughts of the poet to the audience. The structural components of poetry includes lines, couplets, strophes, stanzas, etc. Okay, so now there are various differences between poetry and prose, and we are going to discuss that while we discuss the different types of prose and poetry. So while we discuss the different types of prose and poetry, before that we are going to talk about the different differences between prose and poetry. Okay, so prose refers to a form of literature having ordinary language and sentence structure. Poetry is that form of literature which is aesthetic by nature, that is, it will have a sound, it can have a cadence, it can have a rhyme, a meter, and it normally adds to the meaning. Okay, so next point would be, the language of prose is very direct and informative, so it's straightforward, like how are you, what do you do. So prose is direct to the person who is listening or to the reader. On the other hand, poetry is something which is expressive or creative in nature. It includes comparisons, it includes rhythm, the main part of poetry, something that resonates to your ears, something that is visually so appealing, so rhyme and rhythm that gives a unique cadence and feel. Now, prose is pragmatic, it is realistic, it is and poetry is figurative. Prose also contains paragraphs, which includes number of sentences, that is an implied message or idea, as against poetry is written in verses, which are covered in stanzas. These verses have a lot of unsaid things, and its interpretations depends upon the imagination of the reader. Now, prose is also utilitarian, which conveys a hidden moral, lesson, or idea. Conversely, poetry aims to delight or amuse the reader. So the main purpose of poetry is to amuse or to entertain, whereas the main purpose of prose is to have a utility, it is to give out an information. The most interesting thing in prose is the message or information. In contrast, the poetry shares his or her experience or feeling with the reader, which plays a crucial role in the poetry. In prose, there is no line break, whereas when it comes to poetry, there are a number of line breaks, which is just to follow the beat or stress on an idea. Now, when it comes to paraphrasing or summarizing, both prose and poetry can be paraphrased, but the paraphrase of the poem is not the poem, because the essence of the poem lies in the style of writing, that is, the way in which the poet has expressed his or her verse in verses or stanzas. You must know that there are poetry is called haiku, which are hardly of two lines, so even a single word or a couple of words can be poetry. So the main thing of poetry is, poetry does not go by any rule and regulation. Poetry is all about being entertained, so that whoever is reading it understands how a poetry is written. Now, this writing pattern and cadence to the beauty of poetry cannot be really summarized into words. So the more you write, the poetry should be something that is spontaneous. You should allow poetry to flow out of you in one flow. It should not be something that you are restricting yourself to. Other than this, there are different types of prose and poetry, as you can see on my slide. So we will be talking about the different types of prose and poetry. When it comes to 4 different types of prose, it can be a fictional prose, that is a novel, like a story or a short story can be a fictional prose, wherein you are writing something, you are creative in your own space, but it's written in the form of paragraph, wherein you are giving out information as well. Moving on, we have non-fictional fictional prose, which is the factual account of events such as Anne Frank's The Diary of a Young Girl, which gives the everyday connotations of Anne Frank's everyday life. Heroic prose, which includes the oral or written traditions like fables and legends. Now when it comes to heroic prose, it is it will be written on a very it's written on a very in a completely different form. It will talk about stories and all those things. Poetic prose is writing with poetic qualities such as heightened emotions and imagery that is not written in verse. The only example will be Amy Lowell's Bath. Now poetry comes in several different forms, and they are lyrical sonnets, haiku, acrostic, free verse, free rhyme, descriptive or narrative. So there are different types of poetries as well. Like sonnets are normally dedicated to one's loved one or to a very good friend. Haiku, as I told you, is a very traditional Japanese form of poetry that goes by just 2 or 3 lines. That is Japanese poetry. Acrostics would be mixes letters and phrases. Now you use letter phrases, you use single alphabets as well to make a poetry. Then there is free verse, where you don't really follow one singular type of rhyme, but rather you go on with no set meter. And the rhyme would be creating very specific rhyming pattern. That is like Jack and Jill went up the hill, so Jill and hill is rhyming, so you know that there is a rhythm in it. Moving on, descriptive language to describe a message. So in poetry as well, there are certain postmodern types of poetry which would use a very narrative form to tell a story when it comes to poetry. So descriptive and narrative types of poetries are where you tell a story. If you read a Robert Browning's poetry, you would know that better, where he is talking about an incident, he's talking about a particular thing. So this would be all about the poetry and the different types of poetries and prose that you can think of or you can actually refer to. Now when it comes to poetry and prose, keep one thing in mind, that no matter whether it's a prose, it's a poetry, you need to be creative in your ideas. The best way you can be creative is having a stock of language. So if you use the same language again and again, same words again and again, that will not leave the readers with a good choice. Rather, you should be giving some creativity in your style of writing, some kind of edge to your writing, some kind of imagination to your writing, which will help you to develop and be a creative writer of a different level. So there can be different types of prose and poetry. There can be different tips that we can always suggest you when it comes to writing prose and poetry, but the essential part of it is you need to put in your heart and emotion into it. When it comes to creative writing, your heart matters more than your head. So whatever comes out of you, the emotion that flows out of you, you need to know how to structure your emotions, to put it into words or expressions, so that whatever you want to convey is conveyed to your reader, or conveyed to your to your greater audience in a better way. So these are some of the tips, these are some of the different types of creative writing that you can think of. In our next class, we are going to discuss more about creativity and creative work. I hope you all have understood what we have discussed so far in Unit 1, how tapping your creative skill, in Unit 1.2, wherein we spoke about the essentials when it comes to creative writing, and finally in 1.3, where we discuss the different types of prose and poetry. So with that, I'll take your leave for today. Thank you once again for joining this session. Try writing from your end, try being creative, try attempting to write a poetry, try attempting to write a very small or a short story. It will help you to understand where you stand. But before that, keep one thing in mind. You need to find that place in your house, or maybe anywhere which you think is your place, without any disturbance. Think of those lyrics or those music that helps you to calm down when you are doing a creative writing. You will definitely succeed when it comes to creativity. That would be all from my side today. Thank you.